The wind knifed across the ridge line like it carried its own secrets, cold, sharp, and merciless. The mountains stretched endlessly beneath her boots, rolling in broken shadows across the valley floor. Captain Mara Dalton stood alone at the highest point, her breath misting the air as she lowered her binoculars and pressed the radio mic clip to her vest. She didn't blink, didn't tremble. Her mind was already calculating angles, distances, escape routes, and probabilities. But one thing she didn't calculate, because she didn't need to, was fear. She had run out of fear years ago. The Rangers below had counted 8 enemy snipers hidden across the valley, each one positioned with surgical accuracy, each one already aware of the approaching American team. 8 rifles, 8 scopes, 8 trained killers watching for the first mistake. But they hadn't seen her. And that became their first mistake. The team's radio crackled in her earpiece. "Captain Dalton, we're pinned. They've got high ground on us in 3 directions. I repeat, we cannot advance. We can't even pull back without losing half the squad." Her jaw clenched. Mara scanned the valley again. She knew this terrain better than most. Her mother had taught her to track elk in mountains like these, how to stalk without being heard, how to disappear behind a blade of grass. Her father had trained her in long-distance marksmanship the way other dads taught their kids to ride bicycles. Every stone and slope in this kind of landscape felt like home. She crouched, adjusting the wrap around her rifle barrel to dull its shine. "Copy that," she whispered into the mic. "Hold positions. Don't peek. Don't move. I'll take care of it." She didn't say how. She didn't say she was alone. She didn't say she was about to attempt something no commander would have ordered. She just slung the rifle across her shoulder, and began moving. Her boots made no sound as she descended the slope. She chose each step with the instinct of someone who had lived half her life on dirt and rock and the other half on battlefields. She kept her body low, sliding behind natural cover. She didn't need a map. She didn't need a drone feed. She felt the land. She read it. The first sniper lay somewhere near the western bluff, the one with the fractured stone shelf. She could tell because that was the only position with a clean angle to the Rangers' medic. Whoever that sniper was, they were smart, and they were hunting the team's lifeline first. She reached the outcropping and pressed her back against a cold rock wall. She inhaled once, letting the mountain air fill her lungs, letting her heartbeat slow. She crawled forward on her elbows. The sniper was exactly where she expected, prone, wrapped in a desert ghillie suit, face buried behind a matte black scope. He was too focused on the Rangers to sense the shadow approaching behind him. Mara didn't draw her knife with showmanship, she drew it with efficiency. Her hand moved in a quiet arc, and the threat was neutralized before the man even lifted his finger from the trigger. She eased him onto the ground silently and slid behind his rifle to study the valley through his scope. 7 more, she whispered into her mic, 1 down. Don't move. The Rangers had no idea how she was doing this. Some of them barely knew her. She had arrived at their unit only 2 weeks before, some transfer from a special reconnaissance program nobody seemed to know the details about. She kept to herself. She spoke when necessary. She carried herself like someone who had seen too much and survived all of it. The second sniper was harder. He had placed himself behind a stone arch, a natural gate carved by centuries of wind. The only way to approach without being exposed was through a narrow crawl space beneath a fallen boulder. Mara slid on her stomach, rifle strapped to her back, feeling dust fill her mouth and nose. The space was barely wider than her shoulders. One wrong exhale would echo. One wrong movement would send gravel sliding. She emerged behind a cluster of thorn bushes. The sniper was perched above on the arch, rifle muzzle extending just beyond the stone edge. He had the highest vantage point of any of them. He was the real threat, the one who could see the most, the one who would notice any shift in the valley first. Except he didn't notice her. Mara climbed with the agility of a mountain goat, using cracks in the stone like they were familiar rungs on a childhood ladder. When she reached the top, she moved with the stillness of a stalking wolf. The takedown was silent again, but this time she allowed herself a brief exhale. 2 down. The radio crackled again. "Captain, how the hell are you? Stay focused," she cut in softly. She didn't like praise. She didn't like awe. She liked clean missions, paced breathing, predictable physics. The third and fourth snipers were paired, an unusual but deadly setup. They had formed a crossfire trap, designed for maximum kill coverage. But pairing also meant they trusted each other too much. Aira watched them through a gap in the rocks. One was chewing a piece of dry root, scanning lazily. The other was adjusting his scope with unnecessary confidence. Complacency kills. That was something her father drilled into her. Over and over. Aira set her rifle on a stone ledge, adjusted her sights, and let the wind brush her cheek. She didn't fire immediately. She waited. The wind shifted. She exhaled, a slow controlled stream of breath, and fired once. Then again. 2 bullets, 2 perfect arcs through the thinning mountain air. 2 bodies fell before either one understood they'd been targeted. 4 down. She moved fast now. Time was turning against her. The sun was climbing. Shadows were shrinking. With every passing minute the remaining snipers would begin recalculating, repositioning, noticing the silence from their teammates. Aira sprinted across a sloping ridge, sliding behind a set of boulders as a bullet kissed the dirt near her boot. She froze. That meant the 5th sniper had already realized something was wrong. He was searching, actively hunting her. Good, she thought. Let him look. A moving opponent is easier to study than a hidden one. She crawled low, using the uneven terrain to her advantage. The sniper fired again, the crack echoing across the valley. He was nervous. Too many shots, too fast. He didn't know exactly where she was. He was guessing. Guessing meant mistakes. Aira popped up for half a second. Enough for him to fire, enough for her to see the muzzle flash. She ducked back down. Now she had his exact position. She flanked left, staying below his sightline, climbing until she stood behind a narrow pillar of rock. She counted his breathing. Even at a distance she could tell he was inhaling too sharply. She stepped out just enough, raised her rifle, and dropped him with a single clean shot. 5 down. Her heart rate hadn't changed. Her breathing was still calm, but sweat had begun forming along her spine. This ridge line was unforgiving. She took a short sip from her canteen, then listened. Birds had stopped singing. Wind had shifted. Something felt off. The 6th sniper was using tech, not instinct. That made him more predictable in some ways and more dangerous in others. She moved slowly, testing the terrain. There were no natural angles remaining that matched the team's earlier reports. That meant he had repositioned, using a drone maybe, or thermal sensors. She ducked behind a wide rock slab. A faint whir passed overhead. There it was, the drone. Small, quiet, but not quiet enough. She waited for it to move farther, then tossed her empty canteen out from behind the rock. The drone immediately swiveled. Too mechanical, too reactive. She moved before it could recalculate. She scaled the ridge vertically, hands finding natural grips. She reached a flat ledge and saw the operator kneeling beside his rifle, tablet in hand. He was younger than the others. Faster, maybe, less disciplined. He didn't expect someone to approach him from a sheer vertical climb. Aira's shadow crossed his hands just as he looked up. Shock widened his eyes but he didn't have time to reach for his weapon. She ended it quickly. 6 down. She exhaled, focusing again. 2 left. These final 2 were different. She could feel their precision in the stillness of the valley. They weren't making sound. They were patient, trained, professionals. Maybe even from a special unit. Maybe they knew each other. Maybe they knew she was coming. She circled wide, staying hundreds of meters from the ranger's view. She didn't want them to see what she was about to do. She used the sun's glare to her advantage, creeping up the steepest portion of the mountain until she reached a vantage point no one sane would attempt. The 7th sniper lay within sight, but barely. He was concealed in a shadow between 2 boulders, rifle sticking out only half an inch. She steadied her breathing again. She felt every heartbeat like a pulse of the mountain itself. She fired once. Stone chips flew. She fired again. A soft grunt echoed. His rifle slid down the slope. 7. She felt the final one before she saw him. A tingle along her skin. A presence. The way animals go silent when a predator approaches. She dropped instantly. A bullet hissed centimeters above her ear. She rolled, grabbing a handful of dust, tossing it into the air. Wind pushed it sideways, toward a crevice. Toward him. A single glint of metal betrayed his barrel. She sprinted downhill, zigzagging through rocks, each shot behind her perfectly controlled. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't guessing. He was precise. Too precise. She slid behind a fallen trunk and lay completely still, letting her heartbeat fade, letting her breathing quiet to nothing. She became part of the earth. Minutes passed. Silence. Then she heard it, the faint sound of someone shifting slightly. He thought she had moved farther down. He was adjusting his angle. She rose slowly, barely lifting her rifle above the log. She saw the outline of his helmet reflecting the faintest sliver of sunlight. She whispered to herself, "This is for the team." And she fired. The echo rolled across the mountains like thunder. 8. She stayed still for a moment longer, making sure it was finished. When she finally stood, sweat dripped into her eyes, dirt clung to her clothes, and her breath felt heavier than it had all morning. She pressed her mic. "All snipers down. Route is clear. Move your team." A stunned voice replied, "Captain, you did that alone." She didn't answer. She just watched the Rangers emerge from cover and begin their descent to safety. She wiped her rifle clean and slung it across her back, ready for extraction. Before walking away, she looked at the ridge line, the silent guardian of the valley. She had done what she always did, protect her own, quietly, efficiently, without waiting for applause or recognition. As she headed back toward the evac point, she murmured almost playfully, "If anyone watching enjoyed that mission, don't forget to subscribe to her world stories." More stories like this are on the way. The mountains swallowed her silhouette as she disappeared into the descending light, just as silently as she had arrived.